Welcome again to the wild world of rallying, a form of motorsport that makes far greater demands on the vehicles than any other. In the World Rally Championship, competitors have already been to the gravel and the snow of Sweden, the mud, the dust and the potholes of an incredible safari in Africa. And in the Australian Rally Championship, they've been down to Tasmania, up to Wagga, and now over to Mount Gambier in South Australia. The 6th of 15 rounds in the Australian Championship, but the 2nd of 8 major events, of which competitors can count only their best 6 scores. But firstly, let's catch up with the action from the first major, the Rally of Melbourne, set near Healesville in the Yarra Valley.
Possum Bourne, driving his Subaru Impreza, was the first to be flagged away from the official start in the Melbourne City Square, and as soon as the real action got underway in the Mount Disappointment State Forest, he made his intentions clear in this his comeback event to the Australian Rally Championship. Bourne last contested the title back in 1993, and the likeable Kiwi says he's here to complete some unfinished business and take this his first Australian trophy across the Tasman. One man who was determined to stop that happening was winner of the past 3 national championships, Neil Bates. He would start the year hoping to take his Toyota Celica to a record 4th consecutive title. The rally would turn out to be a battle between these two men. South Australian Ed Ordinsky had hoped to showcase his new Group A Mitsubishi in Melbourne, but he turned up at the starting line in his trusty Group N Lancer after teething problems with his more powerful Group A car. It would set up an intriguing battle between himself and New Zealand Group N champion Rhys Jones, also in a Mitsubishi Lancer. The two staged a titanic struggle throughout the 3-day, 233-kilometre rally around the beautiful Yarra Valley, with the lead changing on many occasions as yet another Trans-Tasman challenge continued to develop. It really was a rally with an international flavour. Monster Tajima was here in his mighty Suzuki Swift to battle it out with Australia's front-wheel drive best Bob Nicoli. After taking control at the start, Bourne was never headed. By the end of day 1, he'd opened up a 31-second advantage, extended that lead to 1 minute 50 after day 2, and finished up 2 minutes 50 seconds ahead of Bates' Celica at the end of day 3, having won 14 of the 16 special stages. The man they call Mr. Smooth, Ed Ordinsky, took out 3rd place outright in the Group N challenge, finishing just 35 seconds ahead of Rhys Jones. Bates drove superbly, but the Celica could not match the power of Bourne's pro-drive developed Impreza. However, Bates and Coral Taylor have forged a powerful partnership over the past 3 championships, and while beaten in Melbourne, they knew that with some modifications they would be in a position to challenge Bourne and his co-driver Craig Vincent over the remaining 7 rounds, starting with the Rally of Mount Gambier.
So Melbourne was a fairly easy result for Possum Bourne over Neil Bates and Ed Ordinsky. But in the Australian Rally Championship, coming into the Mount Gambier round, it's Ed Ordinsky leading from 2nd place Possum Bourne and Neil Bates 3rd in the championship. But firstly, let's have a look at some of the bits in and around Mount Gambier that they won't be tackling in this event.
Mount Gambier is normally a quiet enough town, home to 23,000 people and nestled on the side of the volcanic craters in South Australia's southeast. One of the craters is home to the most recognisable icon of the region, the Blue Lake, formed over 40,000 years ago. The region has a number of other tourist attractions, including the graceful old sailboat, the Lady Nelson, and the amazing Umferson Cave. The town is surrounded by beautiful lush farmland, producing some of the best beef in Australia. But this is timber country. The industry is the lifeblood of the local economy, and the pine forests provide the challenging roads,
cutting it from 13 special stages to 8, and from 140 competitive kilometres to just 84. But firstly, let's catch up with Ian Chesterman, with the 3 times Australian national champion navigator, Coral Taylor, and the winner in Melbourne, Possum Bourne.
The roads around here are traditionally very slippery, even when slightly damp, let alone when under a torrential downpour. And the surface changes a lot. You go from white sandy stuff to red clay to black soil to mossy green. Yeah, keeps you on your toes.
If you go too slow, well, you're going to get thumped. And if you go too fast, you're going to go off. But it's like that in any rally. You've just got to get used to the conditions here and then go from it. This new format with a day's recce before each round, or a couple of days recce before each round, is spot on. It gives you the chance to have a decent look, pick the right tyres and have the car set up properly so that then you can get in and do the job properly.
Since Melbourne, the major contenders have all been busy. Possum Bourne's Subaru was flown back to New Zealand for further work. Down in Canberra, Neil Bates' workshop was flat out chasing more performance from the Celica, and up in Sydney, Rally Art was further developing the customer spec Group A Mitsubishi Lancer for Ed Ordinsky. So let's see how it pans out. Special Stage 1, Mount Gambier Showgrounds. Only 630 metres, but very intense. The driver really just looking at the course himself, not listening to the pace notes from the navigator. Possum making very good use of the ProDrive built car from England. And very happy with his co-driver too, Craig Vincent. Running a little bit wider than he'd like, that's got to cost him time, just drifting out, not economic around this very short track, so you need to get everything right. 38 seconds for Possum. Neil Bates now chasing, car 2. Triple Australian Rally champion. A lot of work done on this car since last time. A lot of chat with Team Toyota Europe. Bits further development, hoping that it's more competitive than previously. Very busy on and off the turbo, the gearbox, the throttle. Tighter there than Possum was. Incredibly busy. And 37 seconds for Neil Bates. Ed Ordinsky now. And in the Group A car in its second outing, being used as the development car for privateer buyers. They can't go too exotic in things they do with it, but much more competitive than when he first drove it. An old car, but brought up to Evo 3 standards and going very well, building towards a 37-second time, which gives him equal fastest with Neil Bates. Possum Born equal third fastest with Michael Guest, Graham Alexander, and then only 1 second further back, Graham Wise and West. 7 cars spread over 2 seconds. But now out into the forest, and big, long, straight, fast forest too. Gooch's Scrub, 14.73 kilometres. Possum Born flying in the Subaru. Really keen to make up that second that he dropped to Neil Bates on the last stage. Bourne putting in an 8 minutes and 5 second time. And Bates and Coral Taylor determined to stay in front too. A day's reconnaissance for this event, so Coral Taylor reading the pace notes, keeping last year's winner of this event very busy at the wheel, Neil Bates. Finally coming in though 3 seconds slower than Possum Born, so a net of 2 seconds down. Now Michael Guest, banging and making more noise even than Bates' car was making a couple of events ago. And of course competing in Group N, and ultimately coming in with an 8:51. Equaling West in his car, but Graham Wise going very well, and in fact finally finishing 6th outright in the event, putting in a good performance. Possum Born now out on Wild Dog, special stage 3, and even longer than the last one, 15 kilometres on this special stage. Possum Born 2 seconds up and trying to get more time on Bates. Going wide and wild and high. Have a look at this. The car twisting and wanting almost, it seems, to turn over. Coming in at 8:15 and Bates chasing him. 2 seconds down. Trying to get it back. Very quick and very efficient and tidy too. Bates looking good. 8 minutes 15 for Possum Born. Neil Bates chasing that, 2 seconds down. But putting in at 8:13, so they're tied at the head of the field. Now, Ed Ordinsky. And Ed, more conservative in the Mitsubishi Lancer. Not as quick. And finally coming in at an 8:26, so dropping 13 seconds to Bates. Michael Guest, he's really trying hard in his Group N car. In fact, ends up putting in an excellent time to be 4th overall, albeit in Group N, and a time of 8:45. Graham Alexander in car 7, not going as well, Group A, yet. Outside the time of Guest on 8:45, Alexander finally turning in a 9:05, highlighting the tremendous performance from Guest.
And then David West, another good hard Group N runner, who in fact puts in an 8:47, only 2 seconds slower than Michael Guest. So that's the end of Wild Dog. Now on to Myora, 11.2 kilometres around. Possumbourne and Neil Bates tied at the head of the field, going absolutely flat-strapped to see what they can pull out on each other. Possumbourne really being forced to try hard here, much harder than he had to try in Melbourne. And Neil Bates pushing him all the way, chasing Possumbourne's time, 6:47. And prepared to risk everything doing it.
The most important thing is to visualise, as Coral's calling the calls, to try and visualise the road from Recce and how much you can cut the corners, and the same going over the crest. But the roads here are very fast, and the adrenaline buzz of all the jumping and the fast crest is quite an exciting event.
It sure is when the engine revs like that and gets brought back to speed, and he's only a second slower than Possumbourne as we pick up now on Alexander in car number 9, a steadier time, going for an 8:04 finally on Myora. And then a highly modified car, the Group A, Daihatsu Charade of Bob Nicoli, the slowest car on Special Stage 2, a rollover, cost him only 7 minutes on the stage, and ends up 8th outright overall. And then the other Subaru WRX in the event, Michael Thompson. This car built by Possumbourne in New Zealand. And then the Australian Falcon XR6 of Steve Winwood, ever entertaining, 9th outright, won his class and in against all sorts of things. Old Commodores, Datsun 280Z, Mazda RX-7, even a Unos 30X. 2 of only 4 retirements in the event, David Ball, his 280Z, and also Mark Fawcett in the Volvo, both of them with drive problems, rear axle and drive shaft. But less expensive for Fawcett this year in the event than last year because he rolled on that occasion.
So, halfway in this one-day event, and the results could barely be closer, just a second between Possumbourne and Neil Bates, and Ed Ordinsky keeping them honest. But in 4th and 5th place, a tremendous Group N battle, just 11 seconds between Michael Guest and David West. But firstly, let's hear from the main contenders from Neil Bates and Possumbourne.
We're chasing Possum hard, and he's got a whole 1 second on us at the moment, so it should be very tight towards the finish.
You've looked in sensational form. You're obviously carrying a lot of speed in those roads, and there's some big jumps out there as well.
Yeah, there's some huge jumps out there. Yeah, we've done a bit of work to the car since Melbourne. I don't particularly like getting beaten, so we're trying to make amends for it, but it's very tight at the moment.
They've got their car going a lot better now and made it a bit more competitive, and there's a lot of jumps. And it's been quite tricky running first on the road because it's really, really slippery one corner and then the next corner is fine. So we just, you know, we're really finding out where you can stop and where you can't for the others, and they're using our marks as a guide, you know.
And now you're going on to exactly the same stages for this afternoon's part of the rally. Is that going to be an easier exercise now, having seen it all once?
I don't think so. I think it'll be cut up now, so it'll be difficult. You know, you have to be careful you don't get too sideways because it'll get in the sand, in that thick sand, and just roll over. So you don't really want to do that. You don't win many rallies on your lid.
Often travelling virtually as fast as circuit races, but on forestry tracks surrounded by trees, rally crews are more conscious than most of safety, as Possumbourne points out.
Basically, when you run a rally car, that you have mandatory safety things that you have to have. The most obvious thing is the roll cage, which protects the car in a rollover or whatever, or hit a bank or something like that. We have the serious seats here that support us so we don't get thrown around. Therefore, you just sit there and it holds you in comfortably, and you're comfortable while you're driving. And we have 6-point harness seat belts over the shoulder, around the side, in between the legs, and that locks you into the seat there. We have an onboard fire extinguisher system that works with a switch outside and inside. If anything goes on fire or anything like that, we just hit the button.
So you hit the switch and it happens all automatically?
Yeah. We obviously, as you can see, wear fireproof overalls, and then underneath we have the fireproof underwear as well. Crash helmet, which obviously everybody sees. The rest of it is just designed so there's nothing there flailing around in the car that's going to cause you to get your foot tangled up getting on the brake pedal. And just little...
Neil Bates, the hunter, Possumbourne, the defender, just 1 second between them as they head off for another 42 kilometres, and also, of course, the Group N battle with the production rally cars. It should be tremendous.
A brief lunch break for both the drivers and navigators, but also their support mechanics. And now into it again, Gooch's Scrub. Second time Possum Born, twice Asia Pacific Rally champion, once New Zealand Rally champion, more than 20 major rally wins. One in South Australia twice, not this rally, but back in 92-3, international B-seeded driver, trying to get away from Neil Bates. The English-built ProDrive Subaru, a very quick, potent car, the world champion car last year, and Possum Born loves it. And Neil Bates is pretty delighted too with the way the Celica he built back in 1994 is going. Another international B-seeded driver, 10 years in rallying, started racing motorbikes when he was 9 years old. And the winner of this rally last year. Possum Born improving by 3 seconds over this stage from the morning, so doing an 8:02 compared with his 8:05. And at 8:05 he was 3 seconds faster this morning than Neil Bates. Bates trying to improve too, coming in fact at an 8:06. So he's 2 seconds faster, but in fact 4 seconds outside Possum's time, both of them quicker than they were in the morning. Ed Ordinsky, car number 3. Marvellous shot of the action in the rally car. 39-year-old ex-school teacher from South Australia, winner, of course, of last year's endurance event, the Mobile Round Australia Trial. Professional rally driver and driving instructor. Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Smooth, Group N champion many times in Rally Australia. And then Michael Guest, who's moved out of Group A into Group N, reversing what Ed Ordinsky's done and going very well with it too. So Michael Guest in a fierce Group N battle with David West in car number 8. And I suspect we'll go on to the end of the event. And then Possum Born on Wild Dog.
When we're going down these long straights, some of them have these huge jumps, and it really does frighten you a bit because it's very hard to pick how fast to go over them. When we do reconnaissance, we're only restricted to speeds like 60 kilometres an hour. But when we're in the rally car on these roads, as you can see, we're doing nearly 200 k's an hour, or at least 180, and we have to brake and get the speed right over the crest. Now, the end, this one coming up at the end, we go one hump and then we have a second one. So you commit yourself over the first jump and you're actually committed to the second jump.
Marvellous insight into what goes on. He did it in 8 minutes and 5 seconds. And Neil Bates, who was quicker on this section first time round, out after him, 5 seconds down at this stage. Not as spectacular. Very much tidier though. Neil Bates, Coral Taylor doing a good job and very pleased with it too, as they have a right to be. A little bit understeery there, trying to get it to come round. But finally on the bitumen there, 8:05 also, equal to Possum Born's time. Then off to Maiora, 11.34 kilometres for Bates now in car number 2. Very good competitive stage this. Very tight corner, and Bates really bogs down a little bit, gets untidy there, and in fact had been feeling as though he had a slow puncture, and by perhaps even here, by the end of the stage, had done 3 kilometres on a flat tyre, having ripped the left-hand bead off the rim. Not the same for Possum Born though, who storms through. And now starting to feel as close as he can to comfortable in these difficult conditions.
The biggest problem with these roads in South Australia is they're very straight, and generally we have T-corners at the end or square corners to turn around. And as you can see now, it's got deep, thick sand. If we get the car too sideways, it's easy for it to dig in and roll over. But the other thing is the way to get a good stage time is to keep your momentum up through the corner. And if you hit the sand too sideways, it kills the speed. It's like putting the brakes on, so you've got to change down, and that way, obviously, you lose time.
In fact, he was 4 seconds faster than on his first run on the section, and Ed Ordinsky out and still in the battle and still chasing and keeping them both honest. Bates there lost 9 seconds to Possum Bourne. Ed Ordinsky doesn't have an answer to the speed of the top two, but doesn't stop trying either, and typically tidy and neat. Michael Guest, absolutely waiting the forest in his Group N car. He's gone so well through this event, not only in Group N, but outright. Tremendous performance from him, and a great battle too against Car 8 West. And they have been at it hammer and tongs, only 10 seconds between them. And the other Group N battle has been this one with Michael Thompson in the WRX. He comes home finally in 8th place overall, 3rd in Group N, so behind Guest and West. And the second XR6 Falcon, James Sargent, in this car, struggling with all the power that it's got to get uphill and digging itself in. And the co-driver, Graham Legg Stoker.
So far in, mate, it's not funny. But
Just push it.
all right, it won't come out. Go on, try.
Backwards, idiot.
Only way.
And now to Mount Gambier Showgrounds for the final 630 metres of this rally, and Possum Bourne loving it. Loving the Subaru WRX Impreza. Loving the final stages. It'll take him to a second major victory in Australia in his comeback drive. And for a man that's invested so much money in the car, in the event, in building back up his reputation, it's been a superb result, but a hard-fought one that he's had to earn. Because in the end, there was very little in it between him and Neil Bates and Coral Taylor. They chased hard all the way, they pushed hard, they developed their car well. They gave Possum Bourne a really hard, honest fight, so that ultimately there was very little between the competitiveness of the crews or the cars.
So an enthralling event. Another win for Possum Bourne, but by just 16 seconds over Neil Bates, and that including Bates driving for some 3 kilometres on a flat tyre. Good result for Ed Ordinsky, and for Michael Guest, victorious in Group N. That gives us a rally championship point score of Ed Ordinsky leading, but he's done 4 events. To Possum Bourne, only 40 points behind him, who's done 2, and Neil Bates likewise, on 300 points, has only done 2 events. The manufacturer's point score has Mitsubishi up front, 495 points from Toyota and Daihatsu, but a great mix of manufacturers in there, all contending this Australian Rally Championship. But let's hear now from the man who's returned to the Australian Rally Championship and is absolutely delighted with the way he's going, winner Possum Bourne.
We can't believe our luck, actually. Things are really starting to go our way. We had to work really, really hard for it today, especially this afternoon after lunch. I went out there and gritted my teeth and went for it, and it's worked out for us, so we're really pleased. But, you know, fair dues to Neil and the boys. They really got their car going good now, and they really took it to us, and we had to work really hard. I knew he'd bought some more bits from TTE, and I know they did something with the gearing and everything like that, so I expected it to be closer to the pace, but it was a little bit closer than we thought.
And the rest of the championship's going to be head-to-head by the looks of things.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that should, in theory, make us both better drivers, because competition is what makes you better, and it'll be cracker. And I want to be able to drive as hard as I can leading up towards Rally in New Zealand, because I want to put in a good effort there, and then again in Rally Australia, and you aren't going to be on the pace if you aren't driving flat out.
It's a big step, though, from the budgets and the performance of Group A to those of Group N. In this rally, won by Michael Guest, having a much steadier year, a much more satisfying one so far than the sometimes troubled performances that he had last year, albeit that he was second in the Mobile Round Australia trial. But for him, there's a big change in going from Group A to N.
Yeah, we've gone from Group A to Group N, which is the production class this year, and that's definitely a change in driving style for me, and that's something I'm working at, and I think as we go through the year we'll get faster.
So, from a very entertaining rally of Mount Gambier, it's off to Western Australia for our next major event. Possum Bourne's already there. He hiked over from South Australia immediately after the event, but for the others it should be a tremendous clash in the Forest Rally in West Australia. I hope you'll join us then.